The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
First Speaking Podcast coming to you on November 27th, 2022. It is actually about 4:30 in the afternoon here. My house is very quiet right now. Very rare do you see me, first off, rare to see me podcast on a Sunday afternoon rather, and not only that, have a house empty and quiet. Because right now my kids are at a fellow friend / co-workers. They're at a rock painting thing with other kids, which they were invited to a couple weeks ago, and I asked if it was okay for me to leave the kids there with you, since I'm watching football. I got some things to do here at home, especially too, because school returns this week. Which I said that's okay, no big deal. My wife is at work still right now for another couple hours, so I got a little bit of me time here, and I'm going to take full advantage of it. So I figured, if I come here, I watch some football. I have the games on right now. The 4 p.m. games just started here. I'm on the iPad here, but we're not talking about any of that stuff right now. We'll say that for another episode during the week, which is actually going to get me to my podcast update here real quick. So, I was looking at some stuff recently with Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and I noticed that they only leave at a time 100 episodes at a time, and after that, a lot of episodes that are 100 episodes away from the current episode, they just lop off the feed. Obviously, now you can get the episode depending on who's hosting it, but they basically Apple and Spotify, and I'm going to assume Google Podcasts also, and probably Amazon as well, do the same thing. They leave up to 100 episodes available, and after that, it's no longer able to be streamed or downloaded off their third party platform. Now, you guys know for many years, and quite often the last couple of years, I've tried different things. With this show, I've always tried to make the show somewhat evergreen as much as possible. And I've gone back and forth with making it evergreen versus having all my content on one feed and all that. But I am at a place now where I want to have more evergreen episodes available for listeners and stuff. Part of the reason why I always had a second feed, when I had the unfiltered feed, was because I wanted to lop off content that was either smaller, shorter, topic-centric, or not evergreen. Like, for example, when I do NFL picks every week, for example, that content it's only relevant for the days from the time I publish it until those games happen, for example. Or if I do a topic on something that's relevant to that specific topic for that day or that week, that's what it's there for. So, meanwhile, you have those little topics, those little shorter pods, whatever, what I say, clogging the main feed here, this show. So, initially, I brought those shows back onto this feed, initially. But then I realized that they started doing that, not just on Apple, but I saw it also on Spotify, too, though, that a lot of content ends up going away at some point when you get to like 100 episodes at a time. So, that being said, because that's happening, and that's happening across pretty much all the platforms I follow. Like I said, I don't know if Stitcher is doing it. I don't know if Google is doing it. I don't know if Amazon's doing it. I just know that the two biggest ones, Apple Podcasts and Spotify, only show or make available 100 episodes at a time. So, I like to do smaller episodes at a time. I like to also do as I'm watching the Ravens Jaguars game right now. Jags won 2-point conversion 40 seconds ago. Lawrence for it. He got it. Wow, what a drive by Trevor Lawrence. Anyway, because of that, I've decided once again to dust off the unfiltered feed again. So what we're going to start doing here, for example, like obviously we do smaller pods, of course, and shorter topic-centric podcasts. To focus on one episode. Like for example, I recorded an episode last week. I think it was last Thursday. I recorded an episode. It was Thanksgiving Thursday. Yes. Episode focusing on Alabama and their chances of getting into the playoff despite having 2 losses and being ranked number 7 in the college playoff rankings. And did that. And that was, 6 minutes? Maybe 7 minutes of content? You know what? I want to do more of those things. I like to do more of those topic-centric things. But the things I don't want to clog the main feed. Especially now when especially now with what I'm now noticing and seeing that they only post 100 at a time. So a lot of the conversational podcasts I do here, for example, like with interviews with whoever it is, and then even the solo stuff like this one, I like to have those on the feed as long as possible because I want those. A lot of this stuff I talk about is evergreen. I want to keep it evergreen as possible, so I want to be able to have it available as long as I can until I have to lop it off. So what I'm going to start doing is I just off the feed again. So if you do have, obviously Apple and Spotify and all that, I know it's available on Apple already. I think Spotify has it up now too also, I believe. Just check out Earnestly Speaking Unfiltered, subscribe to it, and we'll start doing all our smaller episodes on there back again. But also, in addition to that, the week 13, weekly picks I do in the NFL with Mikey B and Zach, Degenerate, I think, even though the show is mainly on topics that are like 50 minutes or less, those shows will be an exception. I think we'll also throw those episodes on that feed as well too, because again, those episodes are also not evergreen. They're relevant for those few days, and then after the week is over, it's no longer relevant. So we're gonna lop off the smaller episodes, then lop off also the weekly picks. Everything else, with the interviews and conversations, obviously, the solo pods I do like this one, for example, that has different topics and different things on there, we'll leave on this feed. And I think that's what we'll do going forward. Like I said, only the main reason being because of, again, the podcast catchers, only allowing 100 episodes at a time. And like I said, I want to keep all these, as much as possible, keep all these episodes available for listeners and stuff. And like I said, we talk about a lot of things on this podcast, especially too, like in addition to sports. We talk politics, we talk, wrestling, we talk life, we talk fatherhood, we talk, sometimes faith and things of that nature. I want to be able to have those things available and not have them lopped off there. But we'll have a home for the small episodes. So I'll have a home for the weekly NFL picks episodes as a spread with Mikey B and Zach, and we'll do that going forward. So that's what's going to go on now. That's the latest podcast update here on Earnestly Speaking Podcast. Anyway, we are now coming out of Thanksgiving weekend here. Like I said, Sunday. I'm back to normal again this week. Like I said, the kids are back to school this week. Thanksgiving this year, 2022, was pretty quiet, actually. And I say that because normally we have something going on. We normally have, whether it's like a big family thing, not on our end. Like, our mornings always start small anyway and quiet. But this is a little different, too, because, so normally every year, we would have, we normally start our day with my wife and I, the kids. We wake up at 9 in the morning, watch a parade. That's her thing that I've gravitated down to, got used to doing now, and watch a parade with her. I was never a big Thanksgiving Day parade guy, but now with being married to my wife now for as long as I have, and with her, and it's something important to her. We obviously those things become something you start doing just because of the be with her. That's all we have. So, we watched the parade, of course. Which is fascinating because my son woke us up to watch the parade. We actually were 5 minutes late into the parade. We slept in. Wife and I slept in on Thursday. I think it was like 7 in the morning. And again, I spoke in the last episode about how daylight savings time is fucking me up. It really is, and it did again on Thursday. I thought it was 7 a.m. in the morning. It was actually 9 o'clock in the morning, 9:05 in the morning. He's like, "Oh, Mom, Dad, the parade is on." So we went downstairs immediately to put on the parade. Downstairs, watched the parade for a couple hours. I make breakfast, of course. That's a tradition. I make breakfast in the morning, for the family. Typical eggs, I made French toast sticks and eggs and bacon and, toast, all that. I had a good time with that. Now, normally in the mornings, like I said, we have my wife's family now, which is very small. We normally have my mother-in-law and then have my brother-in-law come over to the house, and they stay for about 3 to 4 hours, and then they leave about, 1, 2 o'clock when we start doing our own thing. But now, both my mother-in-law and mother-in-law have moved away. They're no longer in the state anymore. My mother-in-law moved to California. My brother-in-law moved to Tennessee. So this is the first time in many years where we had just us four. It was very, not necessarily strange, but it's just different, And, even as small as it is, I've gotten so used to having them here that I really did miss them. You know what I mean? But we made it through. We did those things. We started the day. We just said doing the parade, make breakfast, all that. And the kids, got a little bored. They want to go outside, so we took the kids to the playground for a little bit too. Did that for a little bit. Obviously, I had to do little parenting things too with my son. Who was my oldest son was rough to deal with that whole day. For the most part, he was not listening, and being a little difficult and all stuff. He was saying he was bored and all that. But to the playground, came back home, and then we watched the rest of the first game. I watched a little bit of the game, the first game, Detroit and Buffalo, on my phone. Thank God for technology. And then we came home. I took a bath and all that, took a shower and all that, and then after the Lions Bills games, went to final, went to my mom's house. Now, my mom, like I said, I have on my mom's side, I have 2 brothers, 1 sister, and some have family, some are, my sister's single, doesn't have a family. Just, her, my brother, one brother, has 1 daughter, and then my other brother has a wife and 2 kids. But they all had made their own plans. So they all decided to go down south to visit my aunt, instead of staying home with my mom. So we ended up going to my mom's house. I want to go to my mom's house, because I didn't want to go far. I just want to stay local, because, my weekends here, with, especially for me, the business I work in, the Thanksgiving weekend for me is a chaos. It's not a vacation. I go out to work on the next day, Black Friday, and then the weekend, all through that weekend, I am busy. I am absolutely busy for that entire weekend, and that's just that. So I made a decision to stay local. But I guess I won't say unfortunately, but it ended up being just my family, the 4, go to my mom's house, and it was just her, my stepdad, and then that's it. That's all it was. So it ended up being very quiet, quiet Thanksgiving. I watched it, of course, my Giants were on, playing the Cowboys. Tough game, of course. Giants lose that game, of course, and now 7-4. That's going to be a problem going forward, and the schedule's tough. But I had a good time, and had great food, of course. Caribbean family, of course. So we don't do like normal other American, families. Like we do have like ham, and we don't really care for turkey, in my family necessarily. We had stewed chicken, we had, macaroni pie, we had, a couple of things there. It was great, and we just had, we ate that. I ate to my heart's content. I made sure I dressed, accordingly so I can at least face my stomach to taking the food, which I ate a lot. I don't typically eat a lot like I used to, because I don't, I do better portion control now with food, but on this day I was like, nope, there's no one here to stop me. All my siblings are out of town, they're down south. It's just me and just a small unit of this, my parents, and then in my mom, and then my wife, of course, and the kids. And I just went to town on the food. I went nuts. So we stayed there to about, say, 8:30, maybe 9 o'clock. I think we stayed there till. Watched the rest of the Giants game. Went home at 9 o'clock. Got home. I was exhausted. Ended up going to sleep within the hour or two, whatever. Kids went to sleep pretty much, and I just want to rest up, because Black Friday for me, at my job and in my place of employment, it is the busiest day of the year, so I want to make sure I was rested. Getting to work Friday. Black Friday was chaotic, of course. Just doing what I had to do on Black Friday, make money and all that. I'm just grateful I was able to get out of work on time instead of being stuck later. Same thing Saturday. Busy day Saturday, of course. That a lot to Saturday, and dealing with that as well too. A lot of customers. Like I said, business weekend of the year for us is Black Friday weekend. So then what ended up happening is that my cousins who were who's in town, they came up to visit my mom. So I got a phone call saying, you want to come over to the house after? It's like, my mom's not after work, and we used to stay there all night till last night till what 9 o'clock, 9:30. Came home with the kids, and we watched the rest of Survivor Series, and we had and my wife and 2 boys. One, Logan, my youngest, fell asleep while watching it. My oldest actually stayed awake for once and watched the entire event. And then went to bed. I came upstairs and I passed the hell out. I was exhausted. I had things to do here. Had things to clean up. Had to do laundry and all that. But I was like, you know what? I'll do that tomorrow. I just need to relax. I hadn't been home pretty much, to really relax and get things done in a few days. So today I just kind of limped my day to day, and just really, just did some, did a little bit of cleaning here and there. I did all my laundry, did my kids' laundry, all that. My wife was at work, is at work, should I say. And then, the opportunity came where my kids went to this, rock painting thing. So I was like, you know what, we took advantage of that, and they agreed to keep the kids there. My wife picked them up later on, so I have a couple hours myself now, watching football, do some podcasts and all that, and then, I was doing all that, So it's been a really nice day, really nice day for the most part. So, but yeah, that's been Thanksgiving 2022 in a nutshell. Seeing some family, to see everybody, because everybody's doing their own thing. And that's one of the things you realize too as you get older, when you have your own family, you start creating your own situations. You start creating your own plans. Normally growing up, it's always, okay, we're going to all go to mom's house or all go to grandma's house, and that's kind of the thing. And in either of my families, mom and dad's side. But as you get older and we start, peeling off where our own families, we start making our own plans. Like my sister on my dad's side went to Atlanta. She went to Atlanta to see her mom, and and everybody else had their own plans, and that's how it is now, And I've started, like I said, getting used to building our own thing here. One of the things growing up, all the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, is always about my mom, my grandmother. We go no matter what. And then as you get married, you have your own kids, you start building your own traditions, all that, to the point where it took me a long time to get used to having, a long time used to doing my own small little Thanksgivings here. But I've gotten used to it in the last 10 years, and honestly, I really do like it. I've started appreciating it even more, Anyway, but that was Thanksgiving this year. It was satisfying. I ate a lot to my heart's content. I think I may have gained about 5-10 pounds probably in the last couple of days, just because of all the eating I've been doing. But got back on the horse now. Back on the horse and trying to bounce out again. But again, it is the holidays, especially now. Christmas is only a month away, and and the thing is with my family, it ain't just Christmas. It's one of my wife's Jewish, so we celebrate Hanukkah. We also have birthdays in this month. We have my brother's birthday, my nephew's birthday on Christmas Eve. We have my dad's birthday later in the month. We have aunt's birthday. All of other things of that nature. So there's a lot of things to always celebrate, and we always do celebrate those things individually too, especially. So it's going to be very, like I said, this time of year is always very active. I'm hoping that my wife and I can get a tree. Hopefully this week, get some decorations up on the house now, because I'm in the spirit now, especially the holiday spirit. I want to kind of embrace that. The kids are into it too, especially because they'll be out of school again in a few weeks for 2 weeks, and we got to find a way to fill in that time as well. So, but like I said, all in all, good Thanksgiving here in a Christian household, very satisfying, and we can move forward. So like I was mentioning earlier about my son and his issues, trying to keep him. Keep him active, and all that, and keep him productive. That's one of the challenges about when you have kids that are getting older now, 9 years old, and at that point where they always want something to do, and it's hard to keep up with them now. Like, we both my kids are great kids. I love being a dad, but sometimes I'm reminded, like, wow, what did I get myself into? My oldest son is going through a lot. He's ADHD, and he has a lot of things that he's very expressive about how his feelings, which is a good thing for the record. I love very expressive about these kind of things. But at the same time, it's one of those things I struggle with the ego part of not being able to how I parent him. I was parented a certain way by my parents, and I thought that was the right way. And now we're in a situation now where we actually started doing it that way, and turns out that that's not really the best way. Like, I used to be the one that and look, I'm not against spankings and all that. I think spankings is a good thing. I actually did there's actually is a piece on my YouTube page I did a couple of years ago when I did a podcast with our old friends I've seen a long time, but hopefully get them in the pod in the near future, G Stelio and Ross and Ross. And it was a big clip that's taken out, a little shorts clip you can see on the YouTube page, Earnest Christian on YouTube, talking about spankings. And I used to be the one that used to embrace spanking a child. When our first kid, we did that early on with him. Turns out, not very productive, not good. So the last couple of years, my wife and I have been trying to find ways to adjust the parenting, find ways to be more productive with it, and find ways to give him the space, because I struggle with that too. Because on one hand, these kids today are tough. These kids today have everything at their fingertips. They have all technology, they have social media, and all that. And I think personally, it's harder to parent today than it was when my parents growing up. I really believe that it's hard to parent because there's so much things you're battling against now. Okay, so we try to balance that out. We try to, give him a space to, if he needs to breathe, he needs to vent, he needs to, whatever he needs to do to help him express himself and help him feel like he's in a safe space, when I call that. But sometimes I'm like, sometimes I feel like, that he has enough of that. And I sometimes feel like, the old me comes down, I want he said something online and said something, totally disrespectful. I wanted to, beat his ass. Want to take the belt and spank him. And I struggled with that. And I almost did that on Thursday. I was down on Thanksgiving. I was so pissed at him on Thursday what happened that I almost got a belt and spanked him. But the better part of me got won, and I allowed him to have space and all that, and to apologize for what he did and all that. And it's actually worked for the most part. But like I said, the hard part is looking within yourself to to make sure that you can't allow your own ego overtake the bigger thing. Like, you can't allow your frustration that's in the moment to affect the bigger picture. And that's the thing I'm still working on. You know what I'm saying? But he's, it's tough. And then both kids, and both kids are different. One is very expressive. They're both expressive in some ways, but one is a little more of an introvert than the other. My oldest one is totally me. He's a total extrovert, party animal. When I say party animal, he loves people, wants to be around people all the time. Whereas my youngest is more like, even though he's an extrovert to some degree, he does value his alone time. He can do without people sometimes. He can take space. You know what I'm saying? He can hold back. So I was telling my wife the other day, it's like, and I'll be honest with you, and her and I agree on this thing. And I love being a dad. I love being a dad. I love my kids more than life itself. But I can't lie to you. I'm gonna be very truthful with you about this. If I could do this all over again, if I had a choice to be a parent or not be a parent, I'm not so sure I'd make the same decision I made 9-10 years ago. To be honest with you, I would probably be okay not being a dad. And that just be it. I feel bad saying that. It has nothing to do with my kids in general. It has to do with the fact that people who become parents, I don't think they understand the work that goes into it. Look, there are positives. And in fact, I'm going to tell you, the positives do outweigh the negatives. But the positives are, it takes a lot of work sometimes to get there and to maintain. The negatives are always something you have to really. It's a lot of stress and anxiety, and you really give up a lot of yourself. And again, I'm not this selfish person. Like, although I have those moments, I want my me time. I want this and that. I will say, parenting, for one thing, what it has done for me, and for my wife also too. And she'll tell this. She'll say this on the show on one day. We'll probably want to do a podcast. She'll say this. It has made you appreciate the alone time, your time, the times of you have to do the things that unencumbered, that you can do without having to worry about someone impeding on your time. That's the one thing I will say that parenting has done for us, is that now when we do have an hour or 2 hours for ourselves, or a night to ourselves, or a weekend to ourselves, we now appreciate it. Whereas before kids, we didn't have to appreciate it because we had to worry about that. It was never something that we had to worry about. It was always there. Pre-kids with my wife and I, it was awesome. We would work over 9 to 5 and all that, and then on the nights we would go on date nights. And for the record, we're very simple. We didn't do a lot of like. That's one thing I do regret not. One thing I do regret with not being a dad. Before I becoming a dad, is that I didn't travel enough. And I wish I did more of that. I wish I did more traveling. I wish I did more of those things. But now, because I don't have the opportunity to do those things I used to, it makes me appreciate that now that you can, when you have those times to alone time and all that, you have that, you take full advantage of it. Like right now, I got the opportunity to have 3 hours of myself right now to watch football, to do a podcast and all that stuff, taking full advantage of that. And I feel like also it actually makes for better content for the show too. Also, have my kids, talk about my kids, and I'm sharing this because I want people to understand that who made this podcast, who don't know, maybe they're on the fence about being a parent. I love being a parent. I love being a dad. My kids are my greatest accomplishment. Next to my obviously getting married, number one, and then of course maybe being a father. But it's not easy, and you have to be ready for it. And I always tell people this too. Also, if you want to have a kid, do it. But do it for the right reasons. Do it because you want to. Don't do it because you're forced to. Because a lot of folks who don't want to have kids really in their heart of hearts, but they do it because they're pressured by society or they're pressured by parents and all that. It's your life at the end of the day. You have a kid when you don't want to have a kid, you end up resenting the kid because of it. So my advice to anybody who, is on the fence, put some thought, long, hard thoughts into having a child. It's not easy. It's a fulfilling thing. It's great. I'm grateful for my kids, and I love The good moments always outweigh the bad, but it's a lot. It's a lot you have to consider, and things people don't even consider when they get into it. So, but like I said, not complaining about having kids. I love my kids to death, but it's something that you have to really understand that you can't just give it back. Once you have a kid, you can't give it back. You know what I'm saying? You're in it for the long haul, and it's not. And even after they turn 18 and they're adults, your parent. You still have to. You're still going to worry, and you're still going to have those things, the anxieties of your child, even as an older fellow. You know, you're going to have those anxieties and stuff because that's what it is. That's just what it is. But I will say this much. As I said, many times over, my wife has said this on this podcast in the past, we are done at 2 kids. That is enough. People ask us, do you have a third one? No. In fact, I always said, not only am I done, my wife is more done than I am. You know, we've already done what we needed to do. You know, we had one point we were considering having a third kid because we want to have a girl. No, we are good. 2 is enough. My 2 are great. Raise these 2 into like great men, and that's a lot of pressure on me, especially to do that. And hopefully, I do as good a job as I can. You know, so. Anyway, so recently, I had I won't say a friend, I guess, acquaintance pass away. Every time someone, whether they're close to me, whether it's someone by proxy of me, or maybe. So you remember my friend Dan Vesno, who came on the podcast? I think it was last May, and we had a long talk about a lot of things and stuff. He got married. He got married actually, back in 2015, and I was one of the groomsmen in the wedding, and the other 2 groomsmen in the wedding, I never knew who they were. They were all friends of his from years back, even before I met him. I mean, I've known him 17, 18 years. But those guys know him for about 30 years. So I met a guy named John, who was one of the groomsmen in the wedding. Very nice guy. I met him and his girlfriend, his longtime girlfriend. I don't know if his fiance. I know they got married officially, but great couple. And I only ever seen them that time, and when I went to New York for the wedding for those 2 days. But those 2 days were awesome. Those 2 days were great. I was there by myself. We couldn't go. My wife couldn't go at the time because we just had our first kid. Within the first year or so, which it wasn't practical at the time for us to go. Let's go at the same time because of money and all that. So I went to New York that day just to for the wedding, and met him, and he great guy. His name is John Balk is his last name. But he had been struggling with cancer for the last couple, for a good while, at least from what I understand, 10 years, and it was off and on. And we obviously became friends on Facebook. I never really saw him again, but we always contacted on Facebook. Him and his girlfriend, whatever you call it. And we would call him in touch, even up to today. And you would see that he'd be battling cancer off and on. And I guess it came back recently. He'd been quiet for a while on social media, and he came back recently, and recently just passed away. He passed away about a week and a half ago, which really gutted me, man. Because even though I don't know the guy, just following him the last couple of years on his social media, getting to know him in New York those 2 days, and he was a fantastic human being, great guy. Wish I really got to hang out with him more down here. But like I said, we all have our own lives going on and stuff. But every time that happens, whether somebody I just met, whether somebody I'm related to, grandparents and whatever it may be, every time someone passes away, mortality. I always get freaked out. I always get start thinking about my own life and about how much time I have. It really freaks me out. It really does. And I'm 42. I'm obviously now in my close to my mid 40s. Like, I'm still pretty young, but at the same time, you still think about those things. I always said, growing up for me, fear. One of my biggest fears was dying, and to some degree it still is. But I think I've come to terms with that because it's going to happen at some point. My biggest fear though today is not so much dying, it's also dying young and dying without seeing my kids get older. I want to grow old with my wife. I want to be able to have my kids. They go to college and I get to see them get older, and they go to and they have their own kids. I want those things. I want to be able to experience those things first before God takes me away. So every time someone passed away, I'm close to. I mean, this guy. I think John was he was either his late 40s, early 50s, maybe. I think I'm not sure exactly his age. But every time this happens, someone passed away. When my buddy Eric's his dad passed away a couple years ago. freaked me out because, like, again, these things are so sudden too, especially, even though like he had the disease for a long time, the finale of it, every time this happens, it freaks me out. It really does. But and all you can really do as a person is to do the best you can to stay healthy, do the best you can to be productive, live in the moment, try not to stress about things that doesn't really matter at the end of the day. You do those basic things, and hopefully you live as long as you can. In my case, my biggest issue right for me is trying to stay healthy. I've done a good job of losing a lot of weight in the last couple of years, intermittent fasting, all that. I'm still worried about right now myself possibly being pre-diabetic, because I eat better, but I don't eat great. I should be eating a lot better than I do, and I'm wondering if I don't take care of myself more, that I could be diabetic and all these things that I have to deal with as I get older. I hurt more now. I told you guys on the past on the pod that I love my job, but the biggest hardest part of my job for me is the physical part. How long can I keep doing this? Like, physically, I love my job. And those things can be limited. It could the pain I go through, all that can be controlled if you take care of yourself. But sometimes I just don't do that. Sometimes I just live. Like sometimes I act like I'm still in my 20s and 30s. And when I say about not just a lifestyle, I was never really wanting to party a lot, other than like being in the band, but more so just the way I eat and the way I just do things. I have to be more conscious of how I do those things. So yeah, his passing freaked me out because and he was coming, because I gotten warned from my friend Dan that about 2 weeks out that he's not doing well and he's in hospice and all that. You just never really you never really get used to that. You never really truly prepared. I remember when my grandparents passed away. My grandmother passed away in 2012. My grandfather passed away in 2011. Even though we knew it was coming, we prepared for that. You never really prepared when it actually does happen. When the finale happens, finality happens. But all I can say, really, Ben, is just to live your life, live positively, love each other. Try to do all the positive things you can. In this world, try to if you die knowing that you did the right thing, knowing that you lived a good life, knowing that your family's in check, and all that. That's like I said, my biggest fear for me is leaving my wife and kids behind. My wife already has a small family now, as it is. Her dad's already gone. She has her mom, she has her brother, she has aunt, and then she has cousins she's not really that close to that live in California, but she basically she doesn't have the big family that I have, so I fear that leaving her behind. That's why I'm really trying to become more, how you say it, more trying to take care of myself and trying to just do things to really make sure my life is as long as possible. That's all. But every time someone passes away, it just freaks me out. It really does. It really, really does. So just try to do the best you can, honestly. So that's all I can really say. So, all right, one more thing before I go. A little more on a positive note. This week is the 40-year anniversary. In fact, it's November 30th. This is Wednesday. Is the 40-year anniversary of Michael Jackson's Thriller album. You guys know, obviously, anybody knows me, has known me for my entire life. I'm talking about nearly 40 years. I am a diehard Michael Jackson fan. Actually, I actually had a podcast planned last week. We had to reschedule last minute with some friends of mine, should I say, that are also diehard fans that I've known for over 20 years that I met through my fanhood of Michael. And I'm hoping to do that pod this week. We'll see what happens. Things came up. But it's just fascinating because this album's 40 years old. It is still, and probably forever will be the biggest album of all time. Mainly because of the fact that no one is pushing that much records in that way anymore. The industry's just changed, everything's saturated, and I've been critical of the estate, the Michael Jackson estate, for the last couple of years. I thought there's some who are overcritical of the estate. There's some who are not critical. I'm in the middle. Like about a lot of things, I'm in the middle of politically and all that. The estate's actually done a decent job now with. I thought with this release, they put a bunch of demos on there, which is something pretty decent, on here on this release. But it's funny to reflect on this because, like, okay, so, you know, I'm lucky because, like, you know, I'm a second generation MJ fan in my family. My mother was another diehard, and she still is to this day. My mom had posters. My mom met him like 5 times in the 70s and all that. I became a fan in the 80s when, you know, when I was able to obviously, you know, to walk and talk all that. You know, having posters in the house. And my first poster I ever had of ever in my house was Michael Jackson and E.T. together from 1982. So, you know, reflecting on this album, you know, it does shock people when I tell them this, though, that as great as this album is, and obviously it's the biggest album of all time, that it's not even in my top 4 or 5 favorite Michael Jackson albums. People get shocked when I tell them that. But again, when you're a diehard too, also, most people who are diehards of a band or artist, they tend to go a little more deep cut-ish, you know, or lean on albums that most don't really care for in the mainstream. Obviously, this is as mainstream as it gets, obviously. And, you know, the album has Billie Jean and Beat It and Thriller and Wanna Be Someone Something and Human Nature. I mean, the hits go on. I mean, it's a banger. To me, like, you know, the worst song on the album to me, personally, is the one with Paul McCartney. You think would be the biggest song on the album. You know, at least looking at it through in terms of the artist on there. You know, The Girl's Mine. That's to me is the worst song on the album. The rest of the album to me is fantastic, but it's not even my top 5 or 4 of these top 4 MJ albums. But sometimes I'll you know, won't play this album for a long time, and then I'll jump on it one day and like I've been reminded like, oh yeah, this album is actually really really cool. You know what I mean? But it's amazing how this album changed everything. This album changed everything. This album changed the record industry in ways that people don't realize. Like, there was a major downswing of record sales for a good 3, 4, 5 years going into 1982. And then when this album came out, it changed everything. You know, you can argue that records from 82, 83 on, pop culture, pop music in general, blew up again in the mid-80s because you didn't have, like, you know, after Thriller, you had all these classic albums came out. You know, Prince's 1999 came out in 83, I believe. Then Prince Purple Rain in 84 came out, right? You got Madonna's run here in 83, 84. Lionel Richie's album was huge around that time. You got so many great pop records that came out, in that Thriller was the kind of the trigger point. And, of course, Thriller is the biggest album of all time. The amazing thing also, too, about this album for me, I love, is that he sold this many records, which, by the way, the number that they keep putting out there is 106 million records. I'm not sure that's real or not, because there's a lot of things, there's a lot of records, there's a lot of albums, a lot of things, certifications haven't been updated in years when it comes to Michael Jackson's catalog of stuff. You know, they always say the Eagles had a big album of all time, you know, in the States. Greatest Hits album, which is bullshit because it's not a real album. I don't consider Greatest Hits albums great albums at all. An album is a project, not something you just put together, take songs here and there and put it together. No, bullshit. But to me, the most impressive thing about this album, too, is that he did all this on just 3 videos, a Motown 25 performance in March 83, and he didn't tour on his record. Now, people say, oh, well, you toured the Victory Tour. That's a Jackson. That was a Jackson family tour. That was not a Thriller album. Like, obviously, he performed songs on Thriller on that tour, but that was not a Michael Jackson tour. Let's be clear. Yes, people came to Michael Jackson in the tour because he was a bigger name, of course, lead singer, all that. But that was a Jackson's tour, okay? And also, that tour started almost 2 years after the release of the album. So he was on the road on the downswing of the album in terms of the promotion or whatever. Okay, so that's what was amazing about that record. Now, me personally, I know people love that era, Thriller era, and obviously it's obviously, you know, I love all Michael, no big deal. To me, Bad is better personally. I'm a bigger fan of Bad. Like my 2 favorite albums of his off the wall and Bad. I prefer Dangerous. I prefer History. You know, Thriller's in that conversation. Like I said, there is an album of his I don't like anyway. So let's be real. But there are some that I probably prefer more than others. You know, Thriller, like I said, fantastic record. It's all time. You know, obviously, you know, like I said, greatest album of all time. But like I said, that's more for the mainstream more than anything else. But you know, if my friends come on the show this week, we'll hopefully talk more about that and the promotion of that record. But I just want to acknowledge the album because, again, it is the biggest album of all time, and I wanted to acknowledge it. But to me, it always impressed me that the fact he never toured that record, too, and he still sold the records as he did. You know, amazing. It's truly amazing. So, I mean, this is why he's the greatest of all time, personally. But anyway, I guess I'll do it for now. That's about 40 minutes of podcast time, actually. I actually went longer than I thought I was going to do. So, again, if you have a chance, I said it on top of the pod, if you have a chance and subscribe to it, Earnestly Speak Unfiltered, I'm going to start, like I said, I'm going to start lopping off all the shorter pods, topic-subject pods on that feed. Also, the weekly picks I do with Mikey B and Zach, we're going to probably start doing that on that feed as well, too, because it's topic-subject at the time. I want to keep all the evergreen material and interviews and conversations on this podcast available for this feed only, not cluttered up with all the smaller stuff. So, anyway, talk to you guys later. God bless y'all. We'll talk soon. And, yeah, stay up. Enjoy the rest of Sunday.